Hi, everybody. My name is Dr. Andrea Davis, and I am so happy to be sharing with you today just a bit about diversity and inclusion for the GovEd Talk series. Just a little bit about me. I am the founder and CEO of Scholarly Pursuits, and Scholarly Pursuits is an educational consultancy with a two-part mission. So one part of our mission is to provide culturally proficient support services to students of color looking to get into and through college and graduate school. The next part of our mission is to provide support to organizations who are looking to launch and carry out their equity initiatives. And specifically, we help organizations embed anti-racism into everything they do and everything that they are. And outside of Scholarly Pursuits, I am the branch chief of diversity and inclusion at the United States Census Bureau. And in that role, among many other things, I lead and oversee our agency's diversity and inclusion initiatives and make sure that we are responsive to the more recent executive orders that have come out related to D&I. So that's a little bit about me. So let's go ahead and get started jumping into the presentation. Today, I am going to be talking about structuring a successful diversity, equity, and inclusion office. And because we don't have too much time together today, I won't be able to get into a lot of details about it, but I want to make sure that I highlight some of the key things for you to consider either as you're launching a new diversity and inclusion office, standing up a new office at your agency, or as you're going about perhaps restructuring a current office. Either way, there will be parts of this presentation that are important for you to consider as you go throughout that process, okay? All right, so before getting into the meat of things, I would be remiss if I didn't go ahead and talk a little bit about the mission case for diversity, equity, and inclusion, or diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, as we're calling it now, and as you may have seen in a more recent executive order from June 2021. And also reviewing some of the more recent guiding documents that drive the programs and what you may be doing in the office. But as I'm sure you may know or probably have heard so many times now, of course, research clearly demonstrates that organizations with a diverse workforce, especially diverse workforce or diversity within the ranks of senior leadership, outperform their peer organizations over time. And similarly to that, organizations that have embedded inclusive diversity into the organizational culture are shown to do much better at attracting talent, at keeping talent, at innovating, and just overall at having higher degrees of employee satisfaction and employee engagement. And of course, that is what we want at any government agency or any organization, any workforce for that matter. And last but certainly not least are the federal laws that indicate that we need to be hiring and recruiting a workforce that looks like our society, that reflects our society, and that we need to be embedding D&I, diversity and inclusion, into our strategic planning. And so again, whether you are launching a new D&I office, whether you're needing to or wanting to restructure, whether you're asking for additional personnel, these are things that you want to be able to clearly articulate to your senior leadership or any other potential stakeholders or partners. You just want to make sure you can make the mission case very clear for why you need your request. Also, we have recently had a number of executive orders, again, that I think will really be key to driving your office or the directionality of your office. As you may know, diversity and inclusion doesn't quite have the regulatory background, regulatory guidance that equal employment opportunity has, but there are a number of guiding documents, such as it could be the agency strat plan, it could be guidance documents at the departmental level, and of course, documents coming from the White House that guide and help to determine what it is that you want to do in your office. So I just want to highlight a few here. The first is Executive Order 13583. That's actually from 2011, but I want to mention that because make sure you familiarize yourself with that executive order because it is mentioned many times in the more recent guidance that I'll be talking about in a moment here, executive orders from the current Biden administration. The next up is Executive Order 13985, the Advancing Racial Equity and Support for Underserved Communities order. That was one of the first big DEI related orders to come out of the White House this year. And ultimately, what that order speaks about is what ways can you advance equity in your mission kind of related, your mission driven initiatives, your mission driven practices. So this is order where you want to think about how D&I factors into what you kind of do externally, how you carry out your mission, not your D&I as it relates to your workforce. The workforce internal kind of stuff really was driven home in a recent executive order from June of 2021, which is Executive Order 14035, the executive order where we very clearly added the accessibility, the A in DEIA. And some of the more notable parts of this executive order is it expanded the definition of underserved communities. For example, now we need to be considering, let's say, formerly incarcerated individuals that were specifically mentioned as underserved communities that we want to be considering in D&I offices to the extent possible. It is asking each agency to establish a chief diversity and inclusion officer, position separate from the EEO officer. So that will be a key component of the establishment of your office or redevelopment of your office. And just also expanding DEIA related training opportunities and making sure that that each D&I office is using data-driven approaches to their DEIA initiatives and initiatives that expand well beyond what is required of the Management Directive 715, which of course is part of what many of us already do is in our workforce analytics and EEO kind of adjacent work in D&I offices. Okay. So after you think about that kind of again, the mission case, after you think about how to make that mission case for your agency, understand the general guidance documents, especially like I mentioned, some of these newer ones, these current ones, I want you to make sure that everyone is considering what they need to be aware of as they set the foundation for the office, for building the office, for restructuring the office. So one thing is, what are the significant external and internal facing DEIA related considerations for your agency? This will look very different at each agency. The Census Bureau, for example, we have to be very cognizant of the accessibility of our data to the workforce. Very few people know anything about what the Census Bureau even does outside of the decennial census. So making sure that our data, our different projects, and whatnot are accessible and understandable just to the masses is a big part of what we need to be considering in terms of our external mission-based, mission-oriented kind of work. But also consider, of course, what are your internal facing issues? What do you need to kind of get together in-house as you go about setting up this office? Do you have clear senior leadership support for your DEIA initiatives? What would clear leadership support look like? If you don't have that, how can you go about getting it? Have an understanding of that in advance. Also, where will your DEI office sit within the organizational structure? We know that a best practice here is that the chief of the D&I office should report directly to the agency head. It should send a very clear message that this is important and this person is at the top of the chain, so to speak, within the agency. Are you able to structure your office in that way to where the chief can report directly to the agency head? And is there going to be a sufficient firewall between the DEI office and the Office of General Counsel or Employee Relations, other offices that if they're a little bit too close, if they're structured a little bit too close within the larger organizational structure, it might create some mistrust between staff and the Diversity and Inclusion Office. And some of these things, as you may know, are elements of the MD 715, again, the Management Directive 715 that I mentioned in the previous slide, of creating a model EEO plan program. And so while that is specifically about creating a model EEO program, some of the same best practices, some of the elements of that apply to a D&I office as well. Also, how much is an agency willing to allocate to staffing and different other needs of the office, making sure that you can actually have the staff necessary to support your office in the robust ways that you will need support, especially as more and more executive orders and guidance comes out that we weren't dealing with before. You will need staff who have this robust skill sets. And also make sure that you have a program that will, you have an understanding of kind of what your 15-month or 18-month plan will be. Not saying you have to, from the outset, immediately have a full strategic plan for your office, but have a good idea. All right, what are some of the possible sections or branches? I know every agency, an office or a section or a branch may be different, but what are some of the subcomponents that may be really helpful for you to incorporate into your DEI office? So I have a few suggestions that I've seen work very well in my several years of experience in the government and through different agencies doing this work. One is a front office. A front office is the team that really supports your chief and perhaps the deputy chief as well. This is where your admin folks will sit. I know many agencies already have kind of a larger front office to support the agency head, but I highly recommend having a front office for your DEI office as well. I also think it'd be really helpful to have a diversity and inclusion strategy section. This section really deals with a lot of the diversity and inclusion related priorities that do come from regulations or that do come from guidance, say from actual guidance documents, not just some initiatives that are really developed in-house. So this is the office, this is the branch that may be doing the workforce analytics and maybe looking at the MD 715. This is the part of the office that would be running your special emphasis programs. It would house your special emphasis program managers. Also the special observance program. So for example, African American History Month, National Women's History Month, things like that. All of those special observances would go under this section. This section would also be running your affirmative employment section. And then also kind of last but not least, a section that I'm calling sort of culture, belonging, and success, which kind of captures all the things that are not necessarily related to Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, because you want to make sure that you are having the maximum impact on advancing equity. And to do that, you want to move beyond the EEO basis, the race, color, creed, and so on, and advance equity in a more robust fashion. And also your culture, belonging, and success section may also kind of include employee engagement if that's not a separate office or division within your agency. Another recommendation that I have is what I'm calling a guidance, training, and marketing section. This is where you will have staff who can help with leadership initiatives, leadership consultation. You can have your training cadre, your folks who put on trainings for the agency, your team to work with the executive order compliance, again, because that is increasingly becoming a heavier lift. So plan for that as you build out the office. And also your staff who will help with your social media, who will help to show that the agency is indeed more than just, let's say, a shop to assist when there is an EEO complaint gone awry. You are a proactive entity and a force for really everything in the strat plan. This is a branch where folks can come to for help, for assistance, for support in the aggregate. Another thing you'll want to consider and help and actually begin to develop right away is your list of stakeholders. And some stakeholders will include your EEO office, your various HR linkages like recruitment, hiring, retention, and so on. Of course, your affinity groups, your voluntary employee organizations, the public affairs office, policy office, and just other DEI offices within the federal government and within the private sector as well. You want to make sure that you're networking and that you use all of the resources that you have, because again, it is a lot to run a D&I program properly, and you want to have a good idea of your stakeholders in advance, the internal stakeholders and your external stakeholders, and you'll be working with them on various initiatives really forever. Okay, so what are the key takeaways here? I want to make sure that you know your agency very well and plan accordingly. Again, whether you're launching or restructuring. And this includes having a robust understanding of your senior leadership style and priorities, how they can provide support for you, to what extent they're willing to provide support for you, and knowing the agency's major DEIA related challenges, even changes, what has happened so recently within your agency that may present an issue or it may be a success. And what are and who are your relevant stakeholders, because you'll go back to that list quite a bit throughout your work. Also, structure your DEI office in a way that emphasizes proactive engagement. You don't want to be an afterthought. You want to be seen as a proactive entity within your agency, and you want people to think of you when they think about best practices within the agency. So make sure you're structuring your office in a way so that you can have that proactive engagement. And I think incorporating those different kind of subsections into your DEI office can help you with that. And again, your office structure should support the notion of what I say is D&I 365. You're more than just special observances. You don't just want to be thought of during certain cultural awareness months, certain campaigns. You want it to be D&I 365, and this coincides with that proactive engagement. So structure your office accordingly. All right, so here is my contact information. Thank you so much for joining me as we talked a little bit about structuring your DEI office. I can be reached at founder@myscholarlypursuits.com. I can also be reached at area code 202-681-6229, and feel free to reach out to me at any time. I am a part of your DNI network. So thank you for joining me.